declassify, you can answer yes or no to these. Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you,
I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
So that's where they cut. And that's where Fox is like, oh, well, you heard it right there. The president, Donald Trump, said out loud that he would declassify those documents because he's got nothing to hide.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you know, you don't know. You
less
don't want
so.
to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
Okay. Less so. Less so because there's a lot of phony stuff and a lot of lies in those Epstein documents. It's a weird thing to say.
Think he shouldn't be running, including nearly half of Democrats.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live.
I keep thinking in my head that we all need a mom. I've been thinking that we really all need a tremendous hug in the world right now.
Yeah.
But in our country, we need you to be Mamala of the country.
No, of the world. She said the world, okay? She said the entire world needs it. Look, is it possible? Is it possible to meme Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders into power? We've never tried it. That's what I'm saying. It's just it hasn't been done yet. But what if? What if? The stakes are very high right now, more than anything. You know, could we meme Kamala Harris into actually being a radical leftist? You once thought that she was a cop Mala, who was just here to increase police budgets and say some real wild shit, to be completely honest, you know? And she really does have a way with words, especially like maybe it'd be nice to have just like a silly president, you know, a silly president who's, yes, doing horrifying war crimes and all that kind of stuff, but says silly things. You all remember Bush, right? That was silly. Horrifying, yes, it did come at massive human cost, but there are articles about this, though. Mediasan today. Kamala Harris may be our only hope. Biden should step aside and endorse her. It is with some surprise, reluctance, and even trepidation that I write these words. Joe Biden should stand aside and endorse Kamala Harris.
In just a moment.
But first tonight, for so many years, we have followed the twists and turns of the Jeffrey Epstein story. We may be one step closer now to learning how the very first case was brought, what that very first jury heard, and possibly how Jeffrey Epstein landed what is now known as that sweetheart deal. The legal troubles for Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy hedge fund manager, date back to 2005 when a 14-year-old girl and her parents claimed Epstein molested her at his mansion on Palm Beach. That was the beginning of an investigation that started at a local level and ended up in the hands of the FBI. Prosecutors in the end cut a deal with Epstein. Instead of federal sex trafficking charges in 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to 2 prostitution charges, one for solicitation of a minor. He served a short stint at the Palm Beach County Jail, was granted work release, and walked out 13 months later. He was required to register as a sex offender. During that time, lawsuits started pouring in, first from an anonymous woman seeking $50 million, saying she was forced to have sex with Epstein when she was just a teen. Epstein settled those cases out of court, but in 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time by federal agents in New York for sex trafficking charges. The FBI credited investigative reporting to their case, and as a result, numerous investigations were launched at the federal, state, and local levels. In August of that same year, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell at a federal prison in New York City. An investigation concluded Epstein killed himself. 11 months after his death, federal prosecutors in New York charged Ghislaine Maxwell with sex crimes, saying she recruited underage girls for Epstein, and in some cases, she participated in the abuse. She ultimately was found guilty on multiple charges, including sex trafficking. Then in 2022, those convictions led to a 20-year prison sentence. Maxwell tried to appeal that earlier this year, but was denied and is serving her sentence at a federal prison in Tallahassee. Also in Tallahassee earlier this year, Governor Ron DeSantis signed HB 117. It allows for the public release of grand jury documents in the Epstein case. It means all of those details about what kind of case was presented to that grand jury and how the deal with Epstein was cut so many years ago could finally come to light.
I'm investigative reporter Dave Bowman. I've just scanned this 150-page document. It reflects what Judge Luis Delgado wrote in his order to release grand jury testimony that had been secret. Delgado's quote, "The details in the record will be outrageous to decent people." The grand jury transcript from 2008 reflects the testimony of women and girls, some as young as 14, on what happened at Epstein's former home on Palm Beach. Some of the women testified they were paid to have sex with Epstein. Others tell the grand jury they were paid to recruit young girls to enter Epstein's orbit. Those who pushed for a change in state law allowing the release of this grand jury testimony said it shows the public a major contrast. It has the words from the young women, the victims of just what Epstein did. And despite that, Epstein allowed to plead to a single charge of soliciting prostitution, and that allowed him to serve just 18 months in jail.
You know how, like, there's a lot of MAGA conspiracy theorists who are constantly talking about how, you know, the persecution of Trump is actually just political persecution, but it's not, but that's the lie they're trying to tell. And they're trying to play off this idea that, like, hey, by the way, the American people are waking up to the fact that there's, like, two separate systems of justice. There absolutely is, but it doesn't follow along the lines of, like, Trump. Like, are you kidding me? It's actually somewhat miraculous that he's actually being held accountable for some of the things. Otherwise, the enormous amount of stuff that he's gotten away with for years, he'll never be accountable for. In the case of Jeffrey Epstein, though, this should send chills down the spines of people who don't recognize that this is a situation where someone, like, people just don't listen to women or just don't trust women or don't take the validity of testimony of women fucking seriously. Because you have multiple people who are testifying that, yes, he human trafficked me, yes, he raped me, yes, he tried to get me to recruit other children for him to, again, human traffic and rape. Multiple testimonies from multiple people, and it comes down to, well, he eventually just had to basically face a charge of prostitution, and that was it.
He was able to get a slap on the wrist and go out and commit heinous crimes against underage girls and women in general for many decades to come. This is for the victims. This is for the...
Why do you think DeSantis allowed this to come out? If I was a conspiratorialist, I would say petty revenge against Trump, but I don't think it's that easy. I mean, I'll choose to believe that. That seems to be an amusing reality, so maybe it's just that, you know, he got tired of people mocking him ruthlessly for the weird shoes and the weird voice and the pudding and all that kind of stuff, so... Maybe that's why.
The public, and it's been going on for many years to try to get these sealed documents released to the public.
It's important to note that this testimony from the grand jury does not name any of Epstein's well-connected visitors to his Palm Beach home.
Well, speaking of that, so I don't know if you all saw this clip not too long ago where Donald Trump was being interviewed about leaking documents.
We have this
end
mess.
the Department of Education? Federal Department of
Other
Education?
than to have a little tiny coordination. That's going to happen immediately.
Okay, so Kat, he says that will happen immediately.
Declassify the Epstein files.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, so...
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you?
I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
Guy?
Oh, you cut it off there. Weird, Fox. That's odd. Well, that's too bad. It makes me look like the fool. But he adds a comment to that. It's like, so basically the layup is like, hey, would you declassify this? Would you declassify that? He's like, yep. Oh, I did actually. I declassified some of that. And it's like the Epstein files. Yeah. Obviously I'd want to take a look at it and there's parts of that we'd have to find out whether or not they are in the public interest, but confided in him about knowing secrets that could impact presidential elections between Trump and Hillary Clinton. Mark quoted his brother saying, "If I said what I know about both candidates, they'd have to cancel the election." Despite this bold claim, Mark Epstein admitted that he was unaware of the specific information his brother was referring to, although if Trump and Bill Clinton were mentioned in the documents released early 2024, no definitive evidence of wrongdoing surfaced. Both men have consistently denied any involvement in Epstein's criminal activities.
And we do have a link to that 2008 grand jury testimony to a Palm Beach County grand jury. It's on our website, WPTV.com. Shannon?
Dave Bowman, quick work of moving through those documents this evening.
Great work. You did it. So first on, Alan Dershowitz was named over 100 times in the new Epstein documents. He is now defending Israel in the ICC case against the allegations of genocide.
Just wanted to let you guys know that Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is hiring to defend Israel against the genocide case in the International Criminal Courts, was named in the new Epstein documents over 100 times. He was lawyers for Harvey Weinstein and Epstein. And this guy gets on Fox News to defend himself to the American public, and he brings up Hamas. He basically goes, all these feminists are mad at me. Why aren't they mad at Hamas? Like, that's actually how he chose to defend himself.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You
less
don't
so.
want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
Okay. Less so. Less so because there's a lot of phony stuff and a lot of lies in those Epstein documents. It's a weird thing to say, especially because it's like, hey, would you declassify this? Would you declassify this? 9/11, JFK assassination, big, moments in American history where people are like, riddled with conspiracies in and of themselves on their own. And it's like, what about Epstein? Yeah, less so. Kind of fake news in there.
But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Donald Trump's name appears again and again and again and again in the new document dump that just took place of the grand jury documents relating to criminal proceedings against Jeffrey Epstein. You'll recall.
Well, that's not good. Okay, let's take a quick look at this. On Tuesday, a judge in Florida ordered the release of the transcripts from the 2006 prosecution of the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, which reportedly linked to former President Donald Trump to the sex scandal in a very direct fashion. Did Donald Trump have any message appointments with Jeffrey Epstein? After the Florida federal judge's order, new sets of evidence against sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein is circulating on the internet. Anti-Trump camp claims this time the evidence proves a strong link between Trump and Epstein. This era demands that we speak the truth. Facts. Donald Trump is a pedophile who raped 12 and 13-year-olds. Jeffrey Epstein was the pimp, one user posted, while another wrote, Trump and Epstein were closer than we thought. The memo screenshots would have been sourced from the office of State Attorney Dave Orenberg of Palm Beach County, provide notes to Trump's phone calls with Epstein. In the original documents, these memos were in a triangular marked folder, a code sign for notorious pedophile-related cases. One release memo shows the scheduled call from Epstein to Trump, 5:18 on a phone number, whereas the other one slated for 5:15 a.m. On the same phone number. However, it's not clear why these calls were made, but many netizens claimed it was because Trump was on Epstein's message client list. These documents have come out thanks to a law signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, allowing what is normally non-disclosure to be disclosed primarily because of the public interest involved in the case. Yeah, I mean, I think you could make a case that maybe Ron DeSantis was trying to potentially throw shade without doing it directly. I don't know. I want to believe that, so I'm going to choose to. What did the new Epstein files expose about Donald Trump? The grand jury transcript mainly revealed that the notorious pedophile sexually assaulted 2 minor girls before cutting a plea deal. The transcript clearly showed how those 2 girls were later treated as criminals rather than victims. And now social media is flooded with the court documents dated 2016 and some of the memos alleging Trump was a regular messaging client of Epstein and raped those minors. With the new claims we've made against Trump and that he contacted Epstein multiple times between 2004 and 2006, these previously unseen screenshots were sealed in 2008 as part of Alexander Acosta's deal for Epstein and were released for the first time on July 1st. However, Trump's name did appear in the transcripts. A possible explanation for why the former president was not investigated at the time could be that he was not yet a political figure in 2004. Epstein's list, released in January, noted that the late pedophile held business links with several A-listers and political figures, including Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Stephen Hawking, and more.
Year-old documents released, writing that details in the record will be outrageous. for decent people. Nearly 200 pages of documents have been released containing details of Epstein's crimes, including firsthand accounts from victims and specifics about payoffs to underage victims. And take a look whose name appears over and over and over again in the call log. As one commentator wrote, prior to marrying Melania in January 2005, Trump was calling Jeffrey Epstein in 2004 on the regular. We now have the phone messages between Epstein and Donald Trump, the phone message log that is, and this is in connection with the West Palm Beach indictment of Epstein that was released on Monday. His messages are in between girls calling to confirm massage appointments and messages from the disgraced modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel. It should be noted that Jean-Luc died by way of suicide in prison in 2022. Just take a look right here
Not good.
of the message logs right here, and you'll see, for example, Donald Trump's name appearing again and again and again, and we see it over and over right there. Around this time period, we are also aware from some reporting around that time, and actually in about 2019, 2020 as well, that Donald Trump was looking at real estate property with Epstein.
Okay, you know what is so profoundly fucked about all this? Is that in any other situation, this would have been like an incredible moment for the Biden campaign. Like, you would think they would be fucking celebrating right now. Like, holy shit, there's now a whole bunch more information that really, really closely links Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, including multiple phone calls that he was making towards him in 2004. And this was being done at a time where some of the numbers are suspected to be people who were booking clients, aka he may have been making phone calls to sleep with underage children. That should be a fucking knockout. You should be playing that all over your ads. You should be running it on TV. Like, fucking holy shit, this is so bad for Donald Trump. And this is happening simultaneously at a time where right now the Democratic Party is just completely running around like a headless chicken. No idea what's going on. Who's going to be the nominee? We don't know. Everyone is saying Joe Biden, but even he doesn't even know if he's going to be the nominee. Everything is confusing. We're not entirely sure what's going on here. This is so fucked up. Again, this guy, he's a convicted criminal. He has like an unworldly amount of fucked up shit that just seems to be able to pile up every single time. It should be a candidate who most people would be like, this dude would be disqualified from office for so many reasons. And where should I start? Well, what about the pretty fucking super yikesy connections he has to Jeffrey Epstein, including phone calls multiple times over and over and over and over, calling him and calling numbers that were also used by people who were scheduling appointments with children to, again, sexually assault them. So that's really bad, right? That this enormous amount, and not to mention, this is not the first time that Donald Trump has appeared in very horrifying ways in, you know, court documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, including testimonies from other people who said that they firsthand had accounts of Donald Trump who was arranging to have, again, sexual encounters with children. Again, this is pretty fucked up, massive stuff that it's just wild to me that it's like it's not going to be the biggest story. Like yesterday, while all this shit was going down, like there was that headline. What was it about? RFK Jr. claims that picture of him eating barbecued dog is misinterpreted. Also doesn't deny sexually assaulting his like maid or something. That was like a fucking like almost like, you know, a CNN headline just in and of itself. And that's just like, that's not even the wildest thing that's happening today, is it? You know, that's just one of the many things that's happening today, you know, in amongst everything else.
As well in the West Palm Beach area, and this is not surprising. They were very, very close friends. Donald Trump had remarked about Epstein in an interview with New York Magazine in 2002 that he thought Epstein was, quote, a...
Where's QAnon? Well, I've seen QAnoners approach because, like, I think there's a lot of people who will look at the whole Epstein case and read it for what it is. Rich and powerful people, doesn't matter the political ideology, but rich and powerful people get away with incredibly fucked up stuff, and they can be doing it or aware that other people are doing it and not give a fuck, and no one is blowing the whistle on this, even people who you might think are decent. Like, I used to think that Bill Gates was an evil billionaire, but not a fundamentally evil, horrifying human being that is core. Like, he's just someone who basically is completely, I guess that does make you pretty evil at your core. But a potential fucking pedophile? Stephen Hawking? Like, you know, inspiring story of someone, his mind is brilliant, all that kind of stuff. he may have been going to Epstein Island and then just straight up watching children get sexually assaulted. That could have happened. Like these kind of things. Potentially Chomsky. I mean, we're not entirely sure what is going on there, but there's less Chomsky may have flown to Epstein Island, but Chomsky and his foundation did receive a large amount of money from, the Epstein Foundation as well. But it's one of those things where he doesn't want to talk about it, but it's also kind of fucked up and yikesy. Like, why don't you just, I would outright get in front of that thing. I would be like, well, yes, so I have a foundation. We got a large donation from another organization. I didn't refuse it because it was like $100,000 or $80,000 or whatever it was. And that's all there is to that story. That's about as far as it goes. I would completely condemn that horrifying monster, and I'm glad he's no longer on this earth. That's all you really have to do. Not like none of your business. Where it's like, but you're a very public figure, and this is a very fucked up, case. And now that there's some, even if loose, association, you could definitely get ahead of this and just be like, that's fucked up, right? But for the QAnoners, for the people who are like, there's a section of people who are obsessed with Epstein, but only for the direction insofar as they're willing to say, yeah, Prince Andrew's probably a pedophile. Yeah, Bill Clinton's probably a pedophile. And you're like, yes, absolutely. Yeah, not only are there a huge amount of yikesy photos of an underage individual like massaging Bill Clinton, and that same person who has testified that she was sexually assaulted by members within their inner circle, there's a lot of evidence that could show that, yes, Bill Clinton may have been a frequent guest to Epstein's and may have been engaged in pedophilic activity, and he should probably, if that's true, spend the rest of his days in a prison cell. That I agree. Same thing with Trump. Same thing with Donald Trump. There is a monstrously huge amount of now evidence that shows that Donald Trump on some level was communicating and contacting and associating with Jeffrey Epstein a lot during the period of time in which Jeffrey Epstein was engaged in a lot of the worst things that he was accused of. So that's also really, really fucked up, right?
Flight logs at least 7 times. Here are the receipts.
That's a
straight
lot.
From the court records in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, we see Trump's name over and over again. Also, we know from deposition testimony from the women that were trafficked by Epstein that he would bring them to Trump properties. For example, here's a deposition, page 78, of a woman who was trafficked, and she says, "So we're sitting there, and the pilots told me to go back and tell him that we can't land in New York and that we're going to have to land in Atlantic City." Jeffrey Epstein said, "Great, we'll call up Trump and we'll go to," I don't recall of the name of the casino, but we will go to and a Trump property. Also, here's photos. Donald Trump would bring his kids around Epstein. Donald Trump would go clubbing, hang out, party around Epstein all the time. Multiple pictures there. Also, Mar-a-Lago was used in many ways as a way to bring women to Epstein. For example, Virginia Giuffre, a woman who was trafficked by Epstein. Epstein found her at Mar-a-Lago. That's where he was able to recruit her from. Here's
And again, because all of this is circumstantial, that's what gives the Trump campaign and Trumpers enough plausible deniability. But I'm sorry, you can't be someone who pretends that you care about, the potential Jeffrey Epstein pedophile, human trafficking network and completely exclude Trump from it. You can't have both, all right? You're either someone who is willing to be like, yeah, that's really fucked up what those rich-ass billionaires were doing and getting away with, and politicians and celebrities and academics. Like, holy shit, why were there so many academics who also hung out with these creeps, right? Fucking Richard Dawkins is in that list. Steven Pinker's in that list. Either way, yeah, a whole bunch of weirdos. But, you can't just isolate only Bill Clinton because you hate Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton looks to have a mountain of evidence that really, really associates him with a lot of this. Same with Donald Trump.
An article about that from Reuters. Later in her childhood, this is about Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's victims. She was in and out of foster care. By the age of 14, she was living on the streets, where she says she found nothing except for hunger and pain and more abuse. It was in the year 2000, while attempting to rebuild her life, she met British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, and where ultimately she met her was at Mar-a-Lago. She was working in Mar-a-Lago. I think her father was one of the groundskeepers at Mar-a-Lago, and Giuffre was working there. She met Ghislaine. Ghislaine introduced her to Jeffrey, and the rest was history there. Around this time period as well, Donald Trump was doing some other activities like this as well. This was an article about Donald Trump's behavior in 1991 with the Look of the Year competition. Teen models, powerful men, and private dinners. This is from The Guardian, by the way. When Trump hosted Look of the Year in 1991, here's how it was described by The Guardian. On September 1991, a large private yacht cruised toward the Statue of Liberty. It was a clear, breezy evening, and from the upper deck of the Spirit of New York, a golden sunset could be seen glinting off the Manhattan skyline. Downstairs, a party was in flow. Scores of teenage girls in evening dresses and miniskirts, some as young as 14, and I actually think younger than that, danced under disco lights. It could have been a high school prom were it not for the crowd of older men surrounding them. As the evening wore on, some of the men, many old enough to be the girls' fathers or even grandfathers, joined them on the dance floor, pressing themselves against the girls. One balding man in a suit wrapped his arms around two young models, leering into a film camera that was documenting the evening. Can you please get some beautiful women around me, please? The party aboard the Spirit of New York was one of several events that Donald Trump, then 45 years old, attended with a group of 58 aspiring young models that September. You want to see what they looked like, the aspiring young models who were 14-year-old and I think were younger?
Oh my God.
Here's a photo of them right here from the competition that Donald Trump held. I'm going to just pause right here and keep this picture up. This was the event that Donald Trump held. These were the girls that Donald Trump was hanging out with in the 1990s based on this Guardian article that were on this boat trip that Donald Trump was sponsoring and had for this competition called Look of the Year. So utterly, utterly despicable. By the way,
6 feet tall. She's got the best body.
By the way, your daughter.
She's beautiful.
Can I say this? A piece of ass.
Yeah.
She looks more voluptuous than ever.
She's actually always been very voluptuous. She's tall. She's almost 6 feet.
You going up the escalator? I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?
Folks, this is who he is. So while the release of these new documents that have been released as part of the Epstein files based on the law that was passed in Florida shed more light on Donald Trump's...
If Kendrick Lamar showed us anything, it isn't always about the new information. It's about putting that information we've had into a narrative true. I mean, again, this would be, if I was part of the Democratic establishment, something that I would now be broadcasting everywhere. You know, it's like these new documents just got unsealed. For whatever reason, Ron DeSantis said that it's in the public interest. Absolutely nothing to look at there. But either way, they're unsealed, and it seems like Donald Trump was making a number of phone calls to Jeffrey Epstein, numerous calls, and those calls were taking place during a period of time where Jeffrey Epstein was arranging for very powerful people to have encounters with children where they were sexually assaulting them. And some of the numbers of which he was calling apparently were the same numbers that people were calling to try and get massages by children. So again, this, in addition to all of the times that he's been mentioned by Epstein, in addition to him having an entire history of sexualizing kids and vocally talking about that, openly talking about how he has, you know, looked at underage children while they're changing in his own contest. Like he said that out loud as if it's a point of bragging. Oh, I'm just inspecting, you know, there's so many hot women. It's like, how old are they? Well, you know, 14 to 18 or whatever. And it's like, well, that's supremely fucked up. To hosting that boat party, you know, where it's essentially just like a whole bunch of teenagers getting drunk with disgusting old pedophiles. Yeah, I mean, it is a fucking lot of really, really yikes stuff.
Involvement.
When is Trump going to start streaming on Kick? Yeah, no shit.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincell, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.